Her left hand was still wearing the ring I bought her when we had nothing. I recognized it in the photo. Diamond chip, barely bigger than a breadcrumb, but she used to say it made her feel safe. Now that same hand clutched a blue cocktail while her head rested on Greg's shoulder, his sunglasses perched on her head, like they'd been doing this for years, not days. I wasn't tagged. No filters. No caution. Just a poolside laugh and the caption, "Never settle." I don't remember setting the mug down. 1 second I was drinking coffee. The next, the ceramic clinked against the counter and cracked slightly along the rim. I stared at the screen. My niece, bless her heart, had texted, "Uncle W, you okay? Check Natalie's story before it disappears." What a thoughtful way to learn your wife is off gallivanting across the Caribbean with the man she used to describe as the biggest mistake of her life. She didn't even block me. She wanted me to see it. You ever hear your dignity collapse? It's not a loud thing. It's a soft click, like a gear snapping into place. I didn't scream. I didn't curse. I just pivoted. I'd spent 30 years learning how to reroute supply chains in hostile zones. Shutting down one woman's vacation tab felt almost insultingly easy. To everyone listening, especially you men who've been blindsided with a smirk, I want to thank you for clicking on this. Over 90% of the people who hear these stories never hit subscribe. But doing so helps our small crew keep telling the kind of stories that don't get erased, denied, or swept under the rug. If you've ever been mocked in public by someone you once protected, this one's for you. I opened my laptop. My hands didn't shake. I knew every joint account number by heart. Half of our savings, gone from the shared pot and safely redirected into my solo account within minutes. The joint card? Frozen. I canceled the hotel deposit, reclassified it under her name, and made a quick call to the concierge desk. When the woman picked up and said, "Villa Buena Vista, how may I assist?" I smiled. "Yes," I said. "I'd like to confirm a card update on Ms. Langston's room. She's traveling with a guest, but the account should be revised. She'll be covering the stay. You'll find the previous card declined." The woman confirmed the change, none the wiser. I ended the call with a polite thank you and went back to sipping from my cracked mug. The final step was quiet. I drafted a short email to the regional U.S. Embassy. Subject: financial estrangement. Fraud concerns. Body: I have removed financial support for a spouse currently abroad. I am willing to cooperate fully should a request be filed. My credentials are included. I hit send and sat back. People think rage is loud. They expect shouting, glass shattering, keys thrown in the street. But what they forget is that silence can cut deeper because it's surgical. You don't argue with someone who thinks betrayal is a joke. You outmaneuver them before they even realize there's a game in play. Natalie had always called me stable. Said it like it was both a compliment and an insult. I didn't chase thrill. I planned for contingencies. She wanted that when her dad got sick, when her mom needed a place to stay, when her credit dipped, and I quietly paid off her cards so she wouldn't lose her car. Back then, stability was a lifesaver. Now, stability was apparently boring. I didn't care about Greg. I didn't care about the drinks, the pool, the tan, or the fact that she'd clearly packed that blue bikini I told her made her look like a goddess for him. What got me was the public ridicule, the deliberate cruelty. That caption, "Never settle," that was meant for me. She posted that like a billboard. She wanted the fallout. Well, she'd get it, but not the way she thought. As I shut the laptop, the house was silent. No one to lie to. No one to laugh at me across oceans. Just me, a cracked mug, and the most precise operation I'd executed in years. And she didn't even see it coming. The first transfer took 12 seconds. I timed it. Not because I needed to, my hands know our bank's backend better than most junior analysts, but because I wanted to feel it, to imprint the moment in muscle memory. Half our savings gone from the joint account, rerouted into an account in my name only. Not hidden, not offshore, just mine. The kind of account Natalie used to roll her eyes at when I talked about redundancy planning. She didn't understand redundancy, or logistics, or how to account for human fragility under pressure. I spent 3 decades predicting chaos for a living. I'd learned a thing or two about what breaks first in a crisis, the loudest person in the room. I clicked next into the joint credit card portal and didn't freeze the card immediately. Instead, I combed through the last 6 months of statements, searching for patterns. A lingerie boutique 3 towns over. A spa in an area known for massage therapy with extras. And 3 separate charges from an upscale restaurant in Georgetown on nights. She said she was staying late at work for quarterly filings. You know what was hilarious? Greg had always lived in Georgetown. I disabled the card. All of it. Then I moved through our joint bill list with surgical calm. Her iCloud storage plan? Cancelled. Autopay for her phone? Terminated. Spotify? Hulu? Gone and gone. I left one thing active, the car insurance. It would come in handy when the state DMV inevitably flagged the lapse in registration from the unpaid renewal. The thing is, I wasn't being vengeful. I was being methodical. She had the freedom to be whoever she wanted in that cocktail-glazed paradise with Greg. But I had the right to stop funding it. Then came the call. It wasn't dramatic. I didn't put her on speakerphone. I didn't whisper gotcha into the receiver. I simply looked up the resort's front desk number, easily found from the booking confirmation I had paid for, and called. Villa Buena Vista Resort, concierge speaking. How may I assist you today? Yes, I said. My name is Warren Langston. I believe my wife Natalie Langston is staying with you. She confirmed the guest name. I'd like to note a change. The credit card on file is no longer valid. All charges should now be assigned under her personal account. I will not be covering any additional services. A pause. Would you like us to notify the guests, sir? No need, I said, and hung up. I sat in the silence again. Funny how quiet power can be. Like watching the tide pull out before the tsunami. Natalie once told me I was boring. Predictable, she said during one of her wine-soaked vents. But here's the thing about predictable men. They're underestimated. And underestimated men are dangerous in silence. I opened my encrypted email portal. I'd used it only once before, when I retired and sent off a compliance affidavit regarding sensitive records during my debrief with the DoD. Subject, spousal financial estrangement, preliminary report. Body, wife currently overseas on self-initiated vacation. All financial ties dissolved, pending further review. I am available for verification and am willing to cooperate fully if contacted. Concern for potential misuse of personal identifiers and benefits. Included below, SSN, file number, passport history. No drama, just cold facts, precise formatting, and my full digital signature. I hit send. I knew how long these things took to route. Embassies flag anything involving benefit misuse, identity risk, or financial estrangement, especially if the reporting party has a clearance history and a retired government profile attached to their name, and especially if they flag it under Joint Travel Regulations Section 4105 misuse suspicion. That one gets routed up. Natalie wouldn't feel the hit right away. No, she'd spend a few more hours in the pool. Maybe take a sunset selfie. Maybe mock me again for the benefit of her little digital fan club. But the dominoes had already started falling. She just didn't know she was standing in the middle of them. They were seated by the glass rail, the kind of table that's reserved in advance with champagne chilled before the couple even arrives. Greg wore one of those open linen shirts that made him look like a backup singer for a yacht rock band. Natalie had her hair up in that loose, unbothered way that always took her 45 minutes and a dozen curse words. The waiter lit the candle between them, placed their plates with a flourish, and poured another round of white wine without being asked. They were relaxed, drunk on ambience and each other's delusions. The sun had just slipped below the horizon, leaving the sea in that navy and gold shimmer tourists love to pretend was eternal. But nothing is eternal, especially credit. Natalie smiled that smug smile. The one she'd mastered over years of pretending she'd leveled up in life. She clinked glasses with Greg. To old mistakes, she laughed. To second chances, he said, already halfway through his second bottle. They laughed, flirted, whispered across the table. Her legs crossed under the white tablecloth, his hand occasionally disappearing below it. The air was thick with the kind of confidence that only comes from believing no one's watching, or worse, that no one matters anymore. Then came the bill. Whenever you're ready, ma'am, the waiter said, placing the leather folder gently at her elbow. Natalie didn't even open it. She smiled like she owned the place and handed over the room key card, still warm from her hand. Just charge it to the suite. The waiter nodded and walked off. For 10 full minutes, they resumed sipping their wine, laughing at some joke Greg was whispering in her ear about how bad she used to be in college. She laughed so loudly the couple at the next table gave them a polite side glance. Then the waiter returned. Ma'am, he said, voice tight but professional. The card on file has been declined. Natalie blinked. What? We attempted it twice. It appears the reservation is no longer authorized under the original payment method. She chuckled. No big deal. She reached into her clutch and pulled out her Amex. Try this one. The waiter took it and vanished again. This time, he came back faster. I'm sorry. That one was declined as well. Her smile twitched. That's not possible. Try again. I did, ma'am. Would you like to try another method? She pulled out her phone, the gold one with the cracked corner I'd offered to fix 6 months ago. Opened the banking app. Then paused. Then frowned. Greg noticed. What's wrong? She didn't answer. Just stared at the screen like it had betrayed her. The main account showed a red banner across the top. Insufficient funds. The savings account? Grayed out. Unavailable. Contact administrator. Her throat moved, but no sound came out. She refreshed the app. Still zero. Still grayed out. Greg, she whispered. He leaned in. You okay? She tilted the phone toward him. He stared, then leaned back, arms crossing slowly. You said your husband was harmless. I don't know what this is. He wouldn't, he's too stable. Greg offered. The manager approached this time. Not the waiter. Manager's smile was courteous, rehearsed, and firm. Ma'am, I'm afraid we'll need another method of payment. If you'd prefer to settle this matter privately, we can escort you to the concierge. She started to argue, then looked around. Other diners were watching now, quietly, curiously. Her tan seemed to drain a few shades lighter. Her neck flushed crimson. Greg made a small movement like he might stand, then thought better of it. His expression shifted. Calculating. I left my other card in the room, she muttered. Can I? Of course, ma'am. But the charges must be settled by 11 p.m., or we'll have to notify the front desk to place a hold on room access. I'll handle it. She stood, knocking her napkin to the floor. Greg didn't move to pick it up. She walked away quickly, heels clicking like a metronome of humiliation. Greg leaned back in his chair, sipping the last of the wine. His face was unreadable. But one thing was clear. He wasn't going to be covering the bill. Natalie was about to learn what real isolation felt like. Not the dramatic, movie scene kind. The real kind. The kind that starts with a declined card and ends with the sinking realization that no one is coming to save you. Especially not the man you mocked online. Natalie didn't sleep that night. Not because she didn't have a room. She still had one, for now, but because shame is loud when you're alone. She lay in bed staring at the cracked ceiling fan, counting its wobbles, trying to piece together how the ground disappeared beneath her in under an hour. The concierge had been polite. Professionally distant was more accurate when he asked her to verify another payment method. She'd mumbled something about calling her bank and slinked off to the elevator. Greg hadn't followed. He'd said something like, I'll check in with you later, which was the polite way of saying you're radioactive now. By morning, her shoulders ached from tension. Her phone battery was at 3%, but her power bank wasn't working because that too had been bought on my card during a business trip in Austin. I checked every receipt after she left. She'd think I wouldn't notice the luxury spa tucked between conference nights. So now she was in the taxi, windows down to save the last juice on her phone. The driver tried to make small talk. She ignored him. She arrived at the U.S. consulate by 7:53 a.m. Waited 15 minutes before they unlocked the gate. The receptionist was a young guy with a buzz cut and the kind of polite boredom that came from seeing too many sunburned tourists lose passports after too many margaritas. He asked her to sign in, took her name, scanned her face once, and disappeared into a back room. She sat on the stiff plastic chair, looking around like someone trying to figure out if they're supposed to cry or scream. There was a map of the Caribbean on the wall, a faded photo of an old president, a water cooler with no cups. After 15 minutes, a woman in a charcoal blouse called her name. Mrs. Langston? Natalie stood quickly, smoothing her wrinkled dress. Yes, hi. I need emergency repatriation. My husband froze all my accounts. Our joint ones, mine, everything. I'm stranded here and I need help. The woman nodded calmly. We'll need you to fill out a DS-64 form for lost financial access and identity compromise. Once that's processed, we'll consider temporary housing credit or repatriation options. Natalie blinked. Wait, consider? Correct. We don't guarantee funding, but we begin with a statement and verify details. We'll take your passport, itinerary, and any correspondence you've had with your spouse. I don't. He's not replying to me. He just vanished. The agent tilted her head slightly, like she already knew that part. If you'll have a seat again, someone will speak with you shortly. Natalie returned to the chair, her throat dry, hard in her ears. The embassy lobby was cooler than the outside air, but she was sweating now. 20 more minutes passed. Finally, a man in a navy blazer approached her. Mrs. Langston? Yes? She stood up fast, eager, like a child being called to the front of the line. I wanted to inform you. We've reviewed your preliminary request. However, your husband's already contacted us. Natalie blinked. He what? Yesterday afternoon. He submitted documentation flagging financial estrangement and potential benefit misuse. That triggered a red notice on your file. She laughed. A quick, breathless thing. He's lying. He's just doing this to punish me. The agent didn't flinch. We don't make judgments. But I do need to tell you, your file is now under secondary review. Secondary, what does that mean? The agent paused. It means this isn't being handled at a local level anymore. There was a silence between them. Not tension exactly, just the air slowly evacuating the room. Someone above us, he added, is now reviewing your case. Natalie opened her mouth, but said nothing. Until we get clearance from Washington, we can't issue you any financial voucher or facilitate repatriation. I'm sorry, but I didn't do anything illegal. I'm not the one who determines that, he replied gently. She stumbled back into her chair. Her legs felt hollow. The buzzcut receptionist passed by with a clipboard and didn't make eye contact. Natalie's phone buzzed weakly in her bag, 1% left. She reached for it, then stopped, because there was no one left to call. She sat alone on the edge of her hotel bed, back against the cheap headboard, her knees drawn up like a child who'd just been scolded. The resort's luxury glow had faded. Now it was just a beige room with salt-stained curtains and a dead phone charger she couldn't plug in. Her phone lay in her lap, lifeless, until she took a deep breath, plugged it in at the front desk, and waited by the wall like a teenager grounded on vacation. At 3:17 p.m., it finally buzzed back to life. One bar. No messages. Then it rang. The screen displayed a number she didn't recognize. U.S. area code. 202, Washington, D.C. Her pulse jumped. Maybe it was the embassy. Maybe they had an update. Maybe someone with a heart. She answered. Ms. Natalie Langston, the voice said. Male. Calm. Utterly void of any warmth. Yes, she replied, forcing her voice to sound level. This is Special Liaison Hargrave with Federal Travel Benefit Oversight. We're conducting an inquiry regarding a credentialed application made in your name using Department of Defense spousal data. We have a few questions. What? What does that mean? Do you recall ever submitting or co-signing for any travel benefits tied to Warren Langston's prior military status? I don't, maybe. We were married for 30 years. We shared everything. What kind of question is that? The kind we have to ask when identity access is compromised. I didn't compromise anything. He was my husband. Understood, the voice replied smoothly. Still, using personal identifiers, including clearance-flagged spousal data, for unauthorized travel upgrades or funding allocations constitutes misuse under 18 U.S. Code Section 1001. You understand that? She froze. I didn't know it was illegal. We shared everything. Our accounts, our benefits. He never told me not to use them. Intent isn't relevant at this phase, Ms. Langston. The misuse has been logged and your name has been flagged for secondary clearance across federal travel systems. You will receive an incident number via secure email shortly. He paused. For what it's worth, the voice added flatly, you're not the first. The line went dead. She lowered the phone slowly, stared at it like it had just coughed up a ghost. Her ears rang. She turned toward the patio. Greg stood by the dresser, folding one of his linen shirts into his overnight duffel bag. Slowly, quietly, like a man who'd already made his decision and was just waiting for the right moment to vanish. You're packing? She asked, her voice thin and cracking. He looked up, but didn't answer right away. You said it was a joke, he finally said, folding another shirt. That your husband was boring. Predictable. You didn't say he was connected. He's not connected, she snapped, though it came out as more of a question than a declaration. Greg gave a small laugh. Not mean, not mocking, just a laugh that said he'd stopped caring 30 minutes ago. You ever think maybe boring was a shield? He asked, zipping the bag shut. Guys like that, they don't make noise. They wait. Then they move. She stood frozen as he walked past her, duffel slung over his shoulder. I'm not getting stuck in your mess, Natalie, he said at the door, not even turning around. She opened her mouth, but no sound came out. Not even a whisper. The door clicked shut behind him. For the first time in hours, she realized how loud the cicadas were outside. Or maybe it was just her heartbeat, amplified by silence. She sat back down on the bed, her body a rag doll. The hotel room was still hers, for now, but it might as well have been a holding cell. The soft bathrobe, the minibar, the untouched balcony, they all looked like stage props in a play where she was no longer cast. She pulled the blanket over her shoulders and stared at nothing. The man she'd mocked hadn't raised his voice. He hadn't sent threats or made scenes. He had sent a ripple, and now Washington was calling. She showed up to the airport dressed for victory. Lipstick on, sunglasses oversized, suitcase rolling smoothly behind her like nothing had happened. She was banking on optics, charm, and a little desperation wrapped in cash borrowed from a local couple she'd met at the resort's beach yoga class. Claimed it was for an unexpected family emergency. They didn't ask too many questions. People don't, when you look like her. The ticket was one way, non-refundable, and 4 times what it should have cost. It didn't matter. She needed out. She needed to be home, back on familiar soil, where she could lawyer up, play victim, and paint the whole thing as a misunderstanding between spouses. She'd spin it. She always had. That was Natalie's gift. But the second she handed her passport to the airline clerk, the atmosphere changed. The woman behind the counter scanned the document once. Then again. Her smile wilted ever so slightly. "One moment, ma'am." Natalie laughed, light and casual. "What's wrong?" "Just a quick check. I'll be right back." Natalie nodded, trying to appear unfazed, but her fingers were already cold. The clerk walked off, passport in hand, disappearing behind a frosted glass door. Natalie tapped her boarding pass against her thigh. Behind her, a family argued about snacks. Somewhere to the left, a flight was boarding to Toronto. 10 minutes passed. Then the clerk returned, but she wasn't alone. A man in a dark suit stood beside her, holding a sealed envelope. "Ms. Langston," he said, in the slow, measured tone of someone trained to de-escalate tense conversations. "I'm going to have to ask you to step aside with me for a moment." Natalie blinked. "Is there a problem with my flight?" "There's been a flag placed on your travel clearance." "I'll explain in a moment. I'm a U.S. citizen." "Yes, ma'am. That's not in question." They stepped to the side of the counter, near the security glass, away from the line. He handed her the envelope. It was government standard. Thick, off-white paper, no logo, just her name typed neatly on the front. She tore it open with a frown. Inside, a single sheet. Black text. No greeting. Pending review. Cross-agency investigation of benefit misuse and financial fraud. Travel restrictions active until resolved. Do not depart without embassy clearance. Natalie read it twice. Her mouth opened, then closed, then opened again. "This is ridiculous," she snapped. "My husband did this. He's manipulating you. I need to get back." "Ma'am," the man interrupted gently. "I understand your frustration, but we're not the ones blocking you. This comes from higher up. Multiple agencies are involved now. I haven't been charged with anything. No one said you were. But when flagged under federal review, travel restrictions are standard protocol. Your embassy will provide the next steps." She shook her head. "No, I need to leave. I have family back home. I have rights." "You do. And you'll need to discuss them with your consulate representative. I'm just the courier." She turned, looking for someone, anyone, to intervene. But no one was watching. The clerk had gone back to her screen. The security guards were distracted by another gate. The world moved on without her. "I'm not the criminal here," she muttered. The man didn't respond, just handed her back her unopened passport and walked away. She stood there in the middle of the terminal, arms limp at her sides, letter fluttering slightly in her hand from the gusts of travelers rushing past. Greg was already in the air by then. She'd checked. His flight had departed 3 hours earlier. He didn't leave a note, didn't text, didn't even have the decency to lie. And now she couldn't leave even if she wanted to. There was no scene, no handcuffs, no flashing lights, just a slow, suffocating wait, the kind that comes not from punishment, but from being forgotten by the system that once protected you. Natalie walked slowly to the waiting area, collapsed onto a bench, and stared blankly at the floor tiles. Trapped, not in a cage, not behind bars, but by silence, documentation, and a man who never raised his voice. The man she thought would never fight back. Turns out, he didn't have to. It was raining when the call came. The kind of September drizzle that paints the Ohio sky a colorless gray, more mood than weather. Warren was in his garage, not really working, just organizing the socket wrenches by size, a ritual he did when the world felt too loud. A pot of chili simmered inside, the house quiet but full in a way only solitude can be when it's finally earned. His phone buzzed once in his pocket. Restricted number. He stared at it for a beat, then answered. "Langston. Mr. Warren Langston?" A crisp male voice. Professional. East Coast accent. "This is Deputy Consul Redding with the United States Department of State. Do you have a moment?" Warren didn't sit, just leaned one hand on the workbench and let the silence hang for a breath before replying. "Sure. Go ahead. We're following up on a financial estrangement report you filed regarding your spouse, Natalie Langston. Your request triggered an automatic hold through our interagency system. It escalated due to several overlaps: former clearance classification, travel benefit history, and potential benefit misuse. Warren said nothing. The voice continued. We just need verbal confirmation on record. Can you confirm you initiated the financial separation? Yes, Warren said, calm and even. That was me. May I ask the reason? He considered lying, or softening it, making it about fraud, or irregularities, or misunderstanding. But that's not who he was. That's who he used to be. When he covered for Natalie, excused her impulsiveness, explained away her decisions to their accountant, their neighbors, even to himself. Not anymore. She used my name to upgrade a flight to Aruba, he said plainly. Claimed military benefits she wasn't authorized to access. While on vacation, with another man. She posted it publicly, laughing. The voice on the other end paused. Warren let the silence breathe. I didn't touch her. Didn't chase her. Didn't humiliate her in return, he added. I just stopped funding the circus. Protected what was mine. Deputy Consul Redding cleared his throat. Understood, sir. And thank you for your clarity. In light of that, we're closing the inquiry. The hold will remain on her file, but no further action is required on your part. You will not be contacted again. Warren nodded to no one. Fine by me. There was a pause, then a subtle shift in the consul's tone, less formal, more respectful. You're not the first man in your position, Mr. Langston, but very few handle it with the precision and restraint that you did. Warren gave a half smile. I worked logistics in Kandahar. You learn not to yell. You just move the right piece at the right time. Another pause. Then, good afternoon, sir. The line went dead. Warren set the phone down gently on the bench. Outside, the rain kept falling, soft and steady. He didn't feel triumphant. He felt still. Vindication doesn't always roar. Sometimes it arrives dressed in silence, carrying only the knowledge that you were right, and no one can take that from you. He walked back into the house, checked the stove, stirred the chili, pulled a loaf of rye from the pantry. The kitchen smelled like pepper and cumin and clean countertops. He poured himself a glass of iced tea, sat at the table, and opened the newspaper. On page 4, there was a local story about a couple celebrating their 60th wedding anniversary. He read the whole thing, then folded the page in half. Some people celebrate longevity. Others survive betrayal. He was done surviving. He was finally living. Natalie hadn't charged her phone in 2 days. Not because she couldn't. By then, the embassy had allowed her into their waiting room between interviews, where a single ancient charging station stood like an altar of false hope. But because every time it came alive, it burned. Notifications, voicemails, read receipts with no replies. Every ping now felt like a slap. But on the third morning, when she finally turned it on out of desperation, the screen flashed with a familiar name. Lindsay's sister. For a second, she felt a flicker of hope. Family. Finally. Someone who'd understand. Someone who'd see through the mess and remind her of the years she endured Warren's predictability, his spreadsheets, his quiet breakfasts, his habit of folding her napkins into perfect triangles. She swiped to answer. The voice that greeted her was anything but comforting. Are you out of your mind? Natalie winced. Lynn's aunt. No. You don't talk. You listen. There was a pause, sharp and icy. You embarrassed him. You humiliated our family. Our name. This isn't high school, Natalie. This is a man who paid for Dad's chemo when Mom's insurance collapsed. The same man who flew in on his own dime to fix the roof after that storm. The man who bought you that hybrid you couldn't afford and never told anyone. Natalie's jaw clenched. I didn't plan for any of this. It just happened. Things were complicated. Oh please, Lindsay snapped. Complicated? You flew to Aruba with your ex-boyfriend and posted a photo mocking your husband with the caption, never settle. And now you want sympathy. I was venting, Natalie tried. We were already falling apart. It wasn't. No. You were bored. And you wanted fireworks. Well, now you've got flames, Nat. And we're all choking on the smoke. Natalie swallowed hard. Her voice softened. I didn't think it would go this far. Lindsay exhaled. No. You thought he'd cry. Crawl. Beg. Maybe throw a tantrum. But you forgot who you married. Warren doesn't scream. He moves. Quietly. Precisely. And now you're watching the results in real time. There was a moment of static. Then the tone shifted. I'm only calling to say this once. Don't reach out to Mom. Don't call Dad. And for the love of God, do not post anything online trying to spin this. You're radioactive. Natalie felt her lips part, but nothing came out. Then came the final blow. I'm sending you something. Watch it. Then leave us alone. The call ended. A minute later, her phone buzzed again. Video message. Natalie hesitated. Then tapped. It was short, maybe 30 seconds. The footage was clearly filmed on a phone. The back porch of her parents' house. Warren stood there in a faded t-shirt, garden gloves on, scrubbing mildew off the deck rail with a bucket and sponge. Her mother hovered nearby, pointing at a stubborn stain. Warren smiled. That smile, patient, gentle, the same one he used to give Natalie when she'd rage about missing furniture deliveries or burnt toast. He dipped the sponge again, kept scrubbing, never complained. The camera slowly panned up, catching the breeze fluttering the wind chime she gave her mom 5 birthdays ago. Over the video, a simple caption appeared in white text. This is the man she laughed at. Natalie felt the breath leave her body, not because of what he was doing, but because of what she had become in contrast. She had mocked that. Tears burned her eyes, but nothing came. She was too dry, too brittle. You can't cry when the well is poisoned with shame. She backed into the corner of the room, away from the embassy staff, away from the open windows, curled her knees to her chest, and rested her forehead on the edge of the plastic chair. There was no apology she could draft, no caption she could erase, no sister she could call. She wasn't just isolated now. She was discarded. The airport gate agent stamped her passport with all the enthusiasm of someone clocking in for a night shift they didn't want. No questions, no extra screenings. Just a quiet thunk and a half-hearted welcome back. As if the country itself had grown tired of the paperwork she'd generated. Natalie didn't cry. Not on the plane. Not when the wheels touched down. Not when she watched other passengers step into waiting arms or slide into prearranged Ubers. She moved through customs like a ghost, wearing the same clothes she'd boarded with. Wrinkled linen blouse, flats a size too tight, and a once golden tan now dulled into something closer to defeat. She'd finally been cleared. After multiple embassy visits, cross-agency interviews, and a grueling letter of acknowledgement she'd been strongly advised to sign, admitting unintentional but material misuse of spousal identity access. Her name had been unlocked from the government's shadow lockbox. No formal charges. No public record. But she now lived in the digital equivalent of probation. 6 months of secondary screening and federal verification for any travel, housing, or financial benefits. She could exist again. She just couldn't disappear. The taxi dropped her off in front of the building on a Thursday evening. The neighborhood was the same. Row of brick apartments, modest hedges trimmed like square sentries, the smell of someone grilling sausage 2 doors down. But her key didn't work. She tried again. Jiggled it. Flipped it. Nothing. She knocked. No answer. Only then did she look up and see it. A note, taped to the door with painter's tape, neat block letters in thick Sharpie. Unit transferred. Personal items boxed. Storage paid through October 1st. Key with front desk. WL. No greeting. No anger. No, dear Natalie. Just logistics. She turned around slowly, scanning the hallway. The silence was heavier than any scream. She walked down to the building manager's office. His window still had the same faded Halloween stickers from last year, and buzzed in. A bored 20-something handed her a metal key and pointed toward the storage annex. The box was waiting for her. 2 of them, actually. Plain cardboard, sealed with military-precise tape. Her name printed on one in black marker. She opened the first. Clothes. A few handbags. Paperwork. A crumpled apron with her maiden name stitched on the tag. A receipt from their anniversary dinner 3 years ago, still folded in the pocket of a sweater she hadn't worn in months. The second box was lighter. It held one thing. A photo frame. The 2 of them, Natalie and Warren, smiling under the copper archway of a vineyard in North Carolina. Their 25th anniversary trip. He'd rented out a private tour, brought her champagne in a canvas tote, arranged for the staff to play her favorite jazz song at sunset. She was laughing in the photo. A real laugh. One that reached her eyes. There was a post-it stuck to the glass. Faint yellow, perfectly centered. You were never invisible. You were just never listening. Her knees gave out. She sat on the cold floor of the storage annex, the hum of the overhead light buzzing like a migraine behind her eyes. The photo blurred as her vision warped with tears that finally broke free. It wasn't rage. It wasn't regret. It was something deeper. A kind of spiritual exhale you only experience when you realize that you were never the victim, just the loudest person in the room during the collapse. She didn't just lose a husband. She lost witness. The man who saw her when she was sick, when she was tired, when she was scared. The man who kept the household upright even when she treated him like background noise. The man who caught her lies but never exposed them. Who took every humiliation and still folded her laundry without comment. Now, all that remained was 2 boxes, a frame, and a post-it written by a man who had finally, quietly, closed the file. There was no court ruling, no eviction notice, no dramatic standoff, just absence and silence. And her, in a storage room, holding the last picture of the life she buried with her own hands. The envelope looked official, white, rigid, stamped in dull ink that bled slightly at the edges, like it had been printed in a hurry by someone who didn't care how the recipient would feel reading it. It arrived 2 weeks after Natalie returned, forwarded from the last address Warren had erased her from. She found it in the stack of mail the storage facility had agreed to hold, wedged between a flyer for discount tires and a past-due notice from a utility company she didn't know was still billing her. She walked back to her rented room above a nail salon. Tiny space, twin bed, mini fridge, one window that faced a wall. She didn't sit down. She opened the envelope standing up. United States Department of State, Consular Affairs Division. Post-investigative summary, Langston, Natalie A. Natalie's eyes skipped to the bolded paragraph near the bottom. Her throat went dry as she read. Due to the involvement of federal oversight and confirmed misuse of credential data under Title 38 travel infrastructure, your profile has been flagged for secondary verification across the following categories: international travel, federal housing assistance, reentry clearance, dependent claim privileges, and affiliated benefit systems. Hold effective for 6 months from date of notification. This review may be extended. She sat hard. The metal chair in the kitchenette let out a pained squeak. There it was. The final stamp. The real cost. This wasn't about the money, or the canceled cards, or the frozen hotel account. That had all been tactical. This was surgical. Bureaucratic exile wrapped in polite government language. Warren hadn't taken revenge. He'd taken away credibility. She read the line again. Your profile has been flagged. Not you've been charged. Not you're a criminal. Just flagged. Which meant every door that once opened for her on trust would now hesitate. Pause. Double check. She wasn't erased. She was marked. The kind of mark you don't see until the gate doesn't open. Until the loan officer squints at their screen and says, "Huh, that's odd." Until a border agent types something into a keyboard and politely asks you to step into this room for just a moment. She imagined trying to explain that to a future landlord, a travel partner, a tax clerk. This is just a misunderstanding from my ex-husband. But it wouldn't matter, because it wasn't his word that did this. It was hers. The form she filled, the perks she signed for, the signatures she copied, the things she thought were harmless. Everyone shares documents when they're married. The travel upgrades she clicked through because it was just one little checkbox. Warren hadn't exposed her. He'd simply stopped covering her. He'd let the system see what he always saw: the slow erosion, the entitlement, the cruelty she packaged as charisma. And once it saw her clearly, it didn't blink. It just added a flag. And now, that flag fluttered silently in every room she entered. She folded the letter, stared at the plain seal on the outside. No threats, no insults, just institutional coldness. Her phone buzzed once. A reminder: storage unit expires in 3 days. Renewal fee, $84. She wouldn't renew it. There was nothing left in that box she hadn't already buried. Natalie stood, crossed the room, and stared at herself in the mirror above the sink. No makeup, no filters, just eyes that had finally stopped lying to themselves. This wasn't a punishment. It was a mirror. And Warren? He hadn't shouted. He'd never needed to. He'd let her reflection speak for itself. And now, even the government had started listening.